Life sometimes makes you question everything you have and everything you believe in. 20 years is a long time. It seems like a lifetime. I never thought that everything that was stable and important to me could fall apart so easily. My family, my children, my home, all of this was supposed to be forever. But one morning I woke up and realized that it was no longer mine. Today, when I think about that day, it still seems like some kind of a terrible dream. I was not expecting this. I was not ready. She said she needed a new beginning. But what was left after 20 years together? We built our lives. We went through everything together, from difficult moments to pleasant ones. And now, all these years together turned into an emptiness that dissolved in a moment. I couldn't understand what had happened. I, like an ordinary man, was engaged in work, providing for my family, working to the last, and this was supposed to be my task for life. Of course, we went through difficulties. And I was often absent from home. I didn't have time to pay attention to her feelings, but I thought it was all temporary. As if every day was somehow full because I was always working. And only now I realized that she was actually alone, even when I was around. And now, after 20 years, she came to me and said that she needed more. More freedom, more attention, more money. She needed something that I couldn't give her. Oh, of course, I was shocked. Divorce was inevitable, but I was not prepared for what awaited me afterwards. I hoped that everything would be fine. I thought we would just stop living together, and that would be it. But what she took away was much more than I could have imagined. She didn't just take herself, she took everything. Our savings, half of the house, half of the dacha, and even what I had earned over 20 years. She left me with nothing. I realized that now, after this, I didn't know what to do next. At first I couldn't believe that all this was happening to me. They told me that I couldn't leave the property anyway. It wasn't my territory. And finally, I ended up on the street, with only a bank account with a zero balance. I didn't know how to start living again. I didn't know where to get strength from. Everything I had built over the years had simply fallen apart. It seemed like life had stopped. But we men so often forget that we cannot keep everything under control all the time. And at the moment when I felt completely alone, he appeared. John. This man was an old friend of mine whom I had known since I was young. We worked together at the bank, and after that we were rarely in touch. But now he reappeared in my life as if by appointment. He was a completely different person. He didn't have the same old regret and uncertainty in his eyes as I had. He was successful, rich, and had everything I could ever want. "How are you, my friend?" he asked, sitting with me in a cafe. I couldn't contain myself. I just told him everything. About the divorce, about being left without our money, without a roof over my head, without everything. John listened to me and was silent. "You know," he finally said, "I understand how hard it is. I hope you find this story interesting. Your feedback and suggestions and subscription are always welcome. But you have a chance. You are not alone. And there are opportunities for people like you. If you want to change your life, I know how to do it. Do you want to get paid?" I didn't know how to respond. I didn't believe it was possible. I didn't even have money for basic expenses. But John kept talking, and his words began to sound convincing. He talked about cryptocurrencies, about investing in new technologies. He convinced me that this was the only way out of the crisis. I was afraid. The real fear that gripped me did not allow me to make a decision. What if it was all a hoax? What if I lose the last of my money? But on the other hand, what did I have? What could I lose? Now I realized that money was the only hope for a new beginning. And this chance was so attractive that I finally made up my mind. I gave the last of my savings to invest in cryptocurrency. My fate now depended on this step. A few weeks have passed since I decided to take this step. And, at first it looked like I was just throwing myself into the abyss. Most people didn't understand why I was risking everything to plunge into the unknown world of cryptocurrencies. But it was my decision, and I couldn't stop, because otherwise my life would have become a complete void. I couldn't afford to stay where I was with no money, no plan, and no hope for the future. At the moment I put everything on the line, I was ready for any consequences. My first investments were small. I was afraid to take too many risks, even though I knew that the greater the risk, the greater the opportunity. In the early days, I watched the market with a quiet but acute sense of anxiety. Every day was like a news night. It was essentially a game of survival. The value of cryptocurrencies was skyrocketing, and I followed the charts like a maniac, refreshing pages on my computer, feeling like every click could change my life. But it was not as I had imagined. Not every day brought positive results. Sometimes my investments dropped by 10, 20, 30%, and each such decline felt like a blow in my heart. I would sit in front of the screen, look at the red ribbon on the chart, and not know if I could come out of this game with a win. Fear was my constant companion, and every time I pressed the buy or sell button, I felt this pressure on me, as if I were standing on the edge of an abyss. However, there was nowhere to retreat. I was already in this game. And even when it seemed like I was losing all my money, I kept fighting. I was looking for opportunities, sharing my experience with other people, reading forums and articles, researching the market again and again. I knew that every day I had a chance to change my future. And from time to time, this chance seemed more real to me than ever before. John continued to be my supporter. He had been in this world for a long time, and it was not difficult for him to give me some advice. However, I could not rely on him alone. I realized that even though John was helping, ultimately all decisions were up to me. I started to feel more and more like my life revolved around the numbers on the screen, and I started to wonder if I had become addicted to this process. My mind would not rest. I couldn't stop thinking about money, about risks, about all my mistakes in the past. At the same time, I felt I had to act quickly. It wasn't just a choice between right and wrong. It was a struggle to hold on to at least a part of what I had to give myself a chance for a new life. But was it really a chance? At every stage of this struggle, when I felt that everything was going downhill, I forced myself to continue. I couldn't afford to stop. And the more I dived deeper into this world of finance, the more I realized that success here does not depend on luck, but on a constant strategy and a smart approach. One evening, when I was sitting in the kitchen looking at charts and trying to guess when to sell my assets, my thoughts were interrupted by a phone call. "Hi, it's John." I heard in the phone. "How are you? How's your fight for survival going?" I sighed heavily. John, it's not easy. All these changes, these fluctuations. I don't know if it won't break me. It's not what I'm used to, and I understand. It's hard. But you decided to try. Remember that you have a chance to change your situation, but not with a single success. You have a strategy. If you want, I'll give you some advice. But you have to stick with it, no matter what happens. And then I thought about it. John, as always, was right. This was not the time to give up. Even though I was on the verge of giving up, I kept working. I started to spend more time studying the market. I became a real analyst. And, although it was hard, I felt that I was at least beginning to understand where I was going. Day by day, I started to see my first fruits. It was not a huge amount, but I felt that I was able to stay afloat. However, the inner fear did not leave me. Was this path real, or was it just time, losing more and more? And then, when I thought that everything could fall, something happened that I did not expect. The feeling I had that evening was like the feeling before a big explosion. Everything was going well. My investments were starting to bear fruit, and I even started to feel a little more confident in my abilities. The charts on the screen no longer seemed so intimidating. I seemed to have learned their language, and every movement of this electronic wave became part of my new reality. But life, as always, reminds me of itself. But soon as I started to feel that I was on the right track, the world around me changed. Not only did my financial performance change at a surprising rate, but my personal circumstances changed as well. I had already thought that financial stability was something I had always wanted, but I didn't know that this very stability could break me. A meeting with the past. I woke up that morning with this thought in mind. Strangely enough, it was the day that brought me the most unexpected turn I could have imagined. The phone call I received changed everything. My ex-wife. Olia, this woman with whom I went through so much joy and pain. After our divorce, I had never heard her voice, and now she appears in my life again. Maybe it's the perfect moment for her to come back when I'm trying to build a new life. When I seem to have regained my self-respect and financial stability. But this puts an even greater strain on my emotions. Hello. I heard her voice, and my whole world turned upside down for a moment. You need my help. My situation has become critical. As soon as she said those words, something in my heart clenched. My thought, of course she needs help again. She always does. But I kept myself in check. Olia, what's wrong? I asked, even though I knew that I would hear something in response that would make me think again. I fell into a financial trap. Do you remember how we used to dream about our joint projects? I started investing in a business. It promised big profits, but I lost. I just don't have enough money to get out of debt, she said, and I realized that her words were not just fiction. She was really in trouble. I heard her start to cry into the phone, and I felt a vague nostalgia. I remembered how we used to sit together in the evenings, planning our future together. Those moments when everything seemed possible. But now there was too much pain and betrayal between us. How do you want me to help you? I asked, even though I didn't understand why I was asking this question. The answer was short and clear. Do you know how I first started investing in cryptocurrencies? I got into a bad company. They didn't give me any instructions. I spent everything I had. And now I can't do anything. I know you know how it works. Can you help me? My first reaction was to say no. What could I do? I had barely pulled myself out of this trap, and now I was on the verge of recovery. I was on the verge of starting to live a normal life. And here she was, my ex-wife, with her old problems. How could I have been so stupid to get myself involved in this again? But at the same time, I realized that I was no longer the man I used to be. I was no longer the helpless man who was initially afraid to start a new life after the divorce. I was more knowledgeable, more confident, although fear still had a lot of power over my decisions. And it was this moment that became a test for me. Could I help without losing myself? I don't know if I can help you, I answered after a long pause, but maybe I can give you some advice. And nothing more. I'm not ready to dive into these problems again. Are you refusing to help again? Olia asked, and I felt this question imposed on my heart as if again. Olia, I can't change everything. But if you want, I can help you find a solution, I said, trying to find a compromise. That day I heard gratitude in her voice, but also something else, the feeling that I had become a part of her life again, and there was no answer to that. No matter how hard I tried to move away from the past, it always found a way to come back into my life. Over the next few days, I mentally digested everything that had happened. Is it possible to help a person who once left you with nothing? Should the past stay in the past? And most importantly, was my new money enough to make the right choice and not unravel old problems? This question haunted me. And to be honest, I wasn't sure I could find the right answer. The most difficult thing in life is to make decisions when it seems that there is no right choice. Every day I felt more and more confused in my thoughts. Olia needed help, and I realized that her problem would not go away if I just ignored her calls. At the same time, I couldn't forget how she had left me with nothing after our divorce. So I was faced with a difficult choice. Should I help her or leave it at that? I was sitting in my office, looking at my computer screen, which displayed my financials. The results of the latest investments looked quite promising. It was everything I had dreamed of: a stable income, new opportunities, success that I had achieved on my own. But it was at that moment that I was consumed by a sense of internal conflict. On the one hand, I had achieved what I had been striving for, freedom and financial independence. On the other hand, I still felt the burden of the past. Alia called again a few hours later, and I decided to talk to her. To be honest, I wasn't even sure I wanted to do it. But I felt that I couldn't just close this chapter. "I know you're concerned," she said. "But if you really want to help me, you need to understand that this isn't just about money. It's not just a business or investment issue. I need your help again, not as an ex-husband, but as someone who was once a part of my life." Her words hit me like a stone. She wasn't asking me for money, she was asking for trust. But was it my responsibility? Was I supposed to help a person who had once abandoned me in the most difficult moment of my life? Could I forget how hard it was for me after the divorce, when I was left without money and a roof over my head? And I remembered how painful my divorce was. It was not just the loss of the woman I loved. It was the loss of a dream, of everything I had pinned my hopes on. I was betrayed not only in my relationship, but also in my finances. She took away what was ours without even trying to leave me a fraction of what I had created. I couldn't forget how ruthlessly she had decided that I was worthless. And yet, despite all my inner fears and resentments, I couldn't leave her in trouble. Because I knew one thing: you can help even those who have ever hurt you. Yes, this did not mean that I had to restore everything that happened before, bring our family back. But I could help solve at least one problem. "Okay," I finally said. "I'm ready to help. But it will be only financial help, and only for a certain time. If you want, I can give you some advice on your investments. But that's it. I'm not ready to be your partner in this again." Her grateful voice was short, but it contained more emotion than I expected. "Thank you, I really appreciate it. You have no idea how hard it is for me to ask you, but I had no other choice. I promise that this time it will be different." From that moment on, I started helping her, and together we studied her financial situation. Step by step, we analyzed her investments and the mistakes she made. I felt more and more that this process had become a part of my life again. Even though I wasn't going back in time, I began to see how helping another person could restore some of what was lost. But at the same time, I realized that this decision would change not only her life, but mine as well. The real test for me was the moral questions that arose at every step. Does a person who was a part of my past and left me in a difficult time have the right to ask me for help again? And am I a real hero for helping my ex-wife? There was no answer to these questions, and perhaps there never will be. But a few days later, Alia said that thanks to my advice, the situation had improved. She had new opportunities and her debts were decreasing. She started to feel more confident. And me. And I felt much more important than before, but I also realized that this path of recovery had only just begun. My decision to help her gave me the opportunity not only to look back at the past, but also to see how I had changed. And I was no longer the same man who felt weak and powerless after the divorce. I became stronger, although not without internal struggles and doubts. And a new chapter had opened, and now I realized that helping another person could be part of the process of not only their recovery, but also mine. And these changes were not irreversible. Everything in my life began to change. I felt like I was on a roller coaster at first. Everything was full of difficulties and obstacles, but now I felt that maybe it was finally my turn to succeed. Over all this was thanks to Olia's help, because she not only started to fix her financial problems, but also paid attention to my advice again. Step by step, the situation was getting better. But was it a real victory, or was I just rejoicing too soon? What if this help would leave me alone again, as it had happened again and again in my life? And I was sitting in my office with a monitor in front of me, displaying another batch of numbers and forecasts. The same numbers that had once brought me so much joy, but now looked cold and indifferent. If it hadn't been for that meeting with Oalia, I might not have even paid attention to the data displayed on the screen. After all, it wasn't so much the money that was important as how I felt. I needed confirmation again that I was real. That I hadn't lost my value after the divorce. Alia called again. This time her voice was calmer, but I still felt like she was trying to hide something on the other end of the phone. "Hello. I know you'll say everything will be fine, but there's another problem," she said. "I can't take this situation anymore. You know I still have a lot of debt, and although you've helped me with some of it, there are still bigger issues. You can't help me forever, can you?" Her words sounded like a blow. Was it the truth or another attempt to manipulate my emotions? I thought about it for a long time. All these months I had kept myself in check. I thought I could avoid old emotions, old mistakes. But in the end, I was starting to find myself back in the same maze that had once led to my divorce. At that moment, I remembered how it all started. How Alia and I were a couple, and how easy it was to turn a blind eye to everything that happened between us. How she convinced me that everything would be fine, and how it all turned against me. The loss of money, the house, the peace. Many years had passed since then, but there was still no perfect way to forget. I felt that by helping her, I was falling back into the trap of the past. Yes, I provided financial assistance, and she accepted it. But was I ready to help more? And wasn't this really an attempt to restore something that I hadn't been able to restore before? Olia, I don't know if I can help you again, I said, feeling more and more that it was difficult for me to choose the right answer. I understand that it's hard for you, but we have to look at the situation realistically. I cannot remain your financial supporter. It is not what I want. Her answer was short, but I could hear the anxiety in I understand. Just try to understand. I really need your help. There was more to her words than just a request for money. It was something much deeper. I felt that my decision in this case would have great consequences. More than just financial. More than just changes in our relationship. And I had a feeling that this help was not just for her. It could be my next step in my development, or a complete collapse of everything I had achieved. I saw this choice as a risk and a chance at the same time. I was facing a huge moral barrier. No matter how the situation developed, I felt that there were only two options. Either I help Olaya and keep my emotions under control, trying not to give my heart back, or I go my own way, maintaining the financial stability I had worked so hard to achieve. What have I decided? Did I decide to leave the past behind? What was the outcome? My mind was torn between two worlds. I realized that my help could not only bring results, but also destroy everything I would build next. Victory. It was not just a matter of money. And it was a victory over my fear, the fear that I would fall back into the trap of dependence on another person. In the end, I made a choice. It was not just a financial choice. It was a battle for my future. A day I found the answer within myself, and I made my decision. A few months passed after that important decision. Life began to take on new colors. Although I was still struggling with my own doubts, I now realized that I had made the right choice. And although I wasn't sure if my victory really lasted, I knew for sure that this was just the beginning of a new phase. I was sitting on my balcony looking out at the evening city. My mind was racing. I was not the same person I used to be. Just a few months ago, I was a broken man with almost nothing. And here I was, sitting here, looking at everything that had changed. Many people around me didn't even realize what had happened to me. They didn't see this internal struggle, this path that I had gone through. They just saw the changes in my life, but they did not see this struggle for my dignity, for my place in this world. Now I had everything: a stable income, new opportunities, and even a chance to rebuild myself as a person. I started working on new business projects. I returned to old ideas that had previously seemed impossible because of my limitations. It was my chance to find my place in the world again, without those burdensome dependencies on the past. Everything has changed. My main goal was no longer just to survive. I was no longer the same man who was going through a divorce, penniless and uncertain about the future. My finances began to grow, and my confidence grew with them. I was ready for a new life. But was it really a victory? Or was I still on the verge of a gap between the past and the future? Olia appeared in my life again. She wrote to me from time to time, and I had gotten used to it, even when her voice wasn't as insistent as before. But this time her message was different. It didn't have the same bold request for help as before. Instead, she simply shared the news that she had managed to solve all her problems. She also said that she no longer needed my financial support, that she had done everything on her own. "We are back on our feet again," she wrote. Although her words were meant to sound like a confession, I felt a certain emptiness. Why am I not relieved? Why don't her words make me feel the joy I've been waiting for so long? Nevertheless, with her departure, another problem began to rise again, not quite clear, but still quite important. Am I ready to let go of the past completely? Or am I just using this success to comfort myself? Alia has solved her problems, but I have not yet solved mine. In the meantime, I took on a new project that not only provided me with a good income, but also gave me much more a sense of freedom. Freedom from all the restrictions that had once been imposed on me. No matter how difficult it was, I realized that happiness comes when you stop being dependent on other people and things. I started to manage my life situation on my own instead of clinging to the past. After going through many trials, I realized that the real victory is not money, business success, or even the restoration of old relationships. It is an inner victory that comes with the realization that you are able to control your life again. Every day I took steps towards my new life. I no longer waited for someone to help me. I became free not only from financial problems, but also from emotional dependence on other people. I had new ideas, new goals that did not depend on the past. All these years I was sandwiched between divorce, problems, and struggle. And now I was on a new path. A path where I was the main one in my life. I started implementing projects that I believed in and finally got a chance for my own recovery. It was the first time I felt like I was finding my place in the world without having anything to do with my past mistakes and pain. But what would happen next? No matter how you slice it, I still had a lot of questions. To what awaits me at the next stage of this journey? Would it be a new start for my life, or would I still be tied to the past? I didn't have any exact answers. But I knew one thing for sure. Now I was ready for any changes. That was my real victory. Yes, I changed my life, but did it become better? That remained to be seen. All these questions remained open, as did the possibility for the future itself. We always hear that every ending is just a new beginning. But is it really true? Is it possible to painlessly let go of everything that has happened and not look back? I did not yet know the answer to these questions, although I had already come a long way. Now that I have achieved some success, now that I am no longer held back by financial difficulties and emotional wounds, I am faced with a new choice. My reflections began right after I heard about an important decision that was going to change everything in my life. My ex-wife wrote me a message. It was just a short note saying that she had decided to sell the house we had lived in together for many years. She no longer intended to leave it as an inheritance. It was her private matter, but it was a milestone for me. Hadn't this house become a part of my memories, my former identity? Now that it was to leave my life for good, wasn't this the real end? I sat down in my chair and thought. Did this gesture of farewell mean the final end of my past? Or is it just another part of the changes I am experiencing? It seems that every piece of my old life has begun to gradually evaporate, leaving behind an invisible trail. What is more important to let go or to forget? This is what I could not understand. Apparently, I hadn't forgotten the pain and anxiety that we were parting ways with. But, on the other hand, I have not been living in that shadow for a long time. I have learned to be strong. And now I ask myself, am I really ready to forget what happened forever? Just a few months ago, I was a person trying to find a way to avoid falling into the abyss. I could not even imagine that I would be able to build a new life without financial stability. But now I was sitting in my new office, surrounded by new opportunities, and thinking, is this the real beginning? But life always teaches you lessons that stick in your mind, and I knew that now. All my previous defeats, all these difficult moments, they did not disappear without a trace, and they stayed with me, and I no longer intended to hide or deny them. They helped me become the person I am today. In addition to reflecting on my past, I also began to realize that with every step I take into the future, new doors open, and I began to involve new partners in my projects more actively, meeting people who had the same ideas and plans as me. Together we solved problems that I had never faced before. This new stage was full of changes, but most importantly, I began to feel that this was my new life, like I was part of something bigger. And so, as often happens in such stories, I ask myself a question that still haunts Meg: is this enough? Can I say that the victory is mine? Now I was faced with a choice. If someone had told me a few years ago that I would be sitting in an office like this with such prospects, I would have just laughed. I could not have imagined such a development. But, on the other hand, there was an emptiness in my heart. I no longer felt the things that used to give me meaning, my family, my past life. Perhaps I was ready to start a new phase, but was I really ready to sacrifice everything that was left in my heart? Amana had I completely let go of everything that had come before. There was no easy choice, and so the question that became the main one for me was, will I be able to go this way without looking at the past, or will I still constantly return to those moments that broke me? Hey, there was only one way to understand this, to go forward. The end of one path is always accompanied by new beginnings. And although I didn't have all the answers to the remaining questions, I felt that I was on the right track. And even I felt insecure inside, even if the past, despite all my achievements, still sometimes reminded me of itself. I realized that this path would not end today. This is just another step I'm standing on. Not I did know where the next stage of my life would lead me, but I was ready to find out, and that was enough. The end or the beginning didn't matter. The main thing is that I keep moving. And who knows, maybe this is really just the beginning of what lies ahead.